Recorded live in front of a virtual studio audience and coming to you from the Full Sail University campus in sunny Winter Park, Florida. It's the Media Communications BS Hour. Woo! All right, we've got a pretty cool lineup for you guys today, and we are going to start with a beat with Comcast and Time Warner Cable. Lisa, take it away.
Okay, everyone. So, we've all heard the exciting news that Comcast, everyone's favorite telecom, is buying out one of their larger competitors, Time Warner Cable. Um, this deal is going down for $45 billion, and the combined entity is going to be the largest telecom in the country, serving 1 in 3 homes in the U.S. So it is really going to be a monster. They are the Comcast officials are stating that this will be beneficial to the country through technological innovation, bringing superior service through high-speed internet, faster in-home Wi-Fi, and so on. But those of you who have been around a while and remember the issues with the telephone monopolies could probably think that this might bring up some antitrust issues, that they are reducing um, competition, which in turn is often seen as actually limiting innovation in the country. And through limiting competition, there's no reason for them to develop better service. And so that's something that a lot of people have been bringing up. Their argument they're against that is that they don't have any overlapping markets, so they're not actually taking away any kind of competition in the country. And they're expected that argument is expected to go through, and that the merger is pretty much approved. Where this is becoming a concern, though, is in the fact that Comcast also owns NBC Universal. So they're not only a telecommunications provider, not only a cable provider and an internet provider, but they're also a content creator. So that puts them in direct competition with services like Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon Prime that are providing content that's delivered over the Comcast networks. So as a result, you're seeing a lot of outcry about this over the potential for them to be biased in their service, because they are not only serving their customers, but as a result, providing a service to their own competition. So you can see that there's a big conflict of interest there. So this has become a very important case, and I think it's something that's very relevant to us in the media communications world, because this is going to shape the future of the media world that we're going to live in.
Lisa, I don't.
Yeah, go.
I was just going to say, it's Pete. Is this going? First of all, is there going to be like an impact in terms of net neutrality with this powerhouse that's there now?
Whoa! You're jumping the gun. We're going to talk about that.
Okay, then before that, you mentioned Netflix and content. What's the level of the content that they're delivering? So, in other words, is this going to be like Game of Thrones or anything like that, or is it just sort of type of programming?
Well, are you talking about Comcast's internet and cable service?
Yeah, with the HBO stuff coming in, is any of that coming in or no? Or is that am I thinking of Netflix?
Comcast is a cable company, so anything you want to watch on your cable television will be delivered over their networks.
Okay. In terms of content, then you were bringing up content. I'm just kind of wondering what is the content factor there.
Comcast owns NBC Universal, so anything you can think of that's under the NBC network label or under Universal is their own content that they're producing. So the point being that they are in the content market as well. They're making their own TV series, news broadcasts, and so on. So anybody that provides similar content is in their same market. It's their competition.
And I want to switch gears with what we were hearing in some of the chats the second that you started talking about this, Lisa, with
Hmm.
Comcast and Time Warner. And it was Donovan saying, I hate Comcast. And, John saying, I hate monopolies. And it was interesting because this is our next slide where it kind of shows the consumer perception of both of these companies and how they have drastically declined over the months and especially the years if you backtrack this. So I wanted to hear from you guys. These are two companies that clearly consumers are not fans of merging. So, I want to hear you guys talk. Donovan, why do you hate Comcast? Is it their service? Is it what they offer? Talk to us. Yep. Donovan, I can't hear you.
Is he muted?
Nope, he's good. Well, John says that Monopoly. Oh, I'm not even going to read that. But it's interesting. Do you guys think that this is going to have any effect with the future users of Comcast? The users? No.
I mean, what was the last, does anybody remember too? There was the last thing going on between, was it Comcast and Apple? There was something, I was remembering just last month where they were, um, Comcast was sort of tanking at that time, and then there was talk with Apple, and these things are kind of flowing in and out of the news so quickly. It's almost like when the antitrust came with the telephone companies, when they broke up into the baby bells, that was big because it was just the Bell system that was out. Now you have so many of these media companies that it's almost, I don't know, it kind of seems like it's not going to be as much impact overall because so many people are creating content, so many people are delivering content. So it's not. I think it's sort of a different animal, if you will, than when the phone companies had the whole antitrust, or when the phone company had the whole antitrust thing. So it wasn't giving like MCI and all those other companies a fair shot at it. I'm not quite sure about this. It just doesn't seem to be that same kind of impact when you're thinking about it. Although, they're going to be pretty big. So I don't know.
Yeah, they're going to be pretty huge. It is not. I was actually reading on that same issue. It's not quite the same scale as the AT&T
Yeah.
monopoly from back in the day,
Mhm.
but it's comparable in its nature, less not if not its scope, because the Comcast, now that they own Time Warner, like I said, it's 1 in 3 homes in the U.S. they're serving, so it's a third of the market with
Mhm.
that last bit divvied up between whoever the competition is. So they're going to be able to have a lot of influence. And if they decide, which we'll get to in the net neutrality segment, to to show favoritism toward one provider over another, it, it can really hurt innovation and diversity.
Donovan, did you want to chime in now before we move on
Yeah.
to the next? Yep, go for it.
What I dislike about Comcast is that it's not that their good quality with the quality is bad. It's just that their customer service isn't really the best, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And like I've had some troubles with them since I've got here.
You're
Like
not the only one.
like um I started my service in August, and I tried to get a reasonable package, and then the one thing I was upset about is that they give you one price, and by the time you get your bill, you have a whole lot of fees that no one thought it was,
Oh yeah,
you
that's the
know,
switch and
you have
bait
to.
tactic. Yeah. But that
Yeah,
goes to show now why Comcast versus something like Amazon Prime or Netflix or Hulu. I'm asking you, Donovan.
I think that's a little bit of an apples and
sorry.
oranges question,
You
though.
think so? Because I
Yeah,
like what Pete was talking about. How well now we're going to talk about how Amazon, has created this, liaison with HBO for specific media shows that they are allowing it just exclusively to go through Amazon Prime. So Pete and I were talking about this is showing that it really is the future of television between Hulu and Netflix and Amazon Prime. So I want to hear what you were just going to talk about, Lisa.
well, the reason I said it's an apples and oranges question is because Amazon and HBO are both content providers, whereas Comcast is the cable service. It's the way that that content gets to you. They're carrying that content to you. They also create content, which is where the conflict comes
Right.
in. But so it's not a matter of choosing Amazon Prime over Comcast because you have to have internet in order to use Amazon Prime.
Did you want to chime in on the Amazon purchasing exclusivity with HBO for certain shows?
Yeah, it kind of plays into that whole, are we still in this sort of state of flux? Because I keep feeling that there's this sort of Apple in the background that's still developing this Apple TV. And what's kind of making me lean a little in that direction, like at least pay attention to it, is that so many weeks, like every 2 to 3 weeks, I'm getting more and more content on my Apple TV that's connecting to a cable company. So I can actually enjoy it on so many other devices and that kind of thing. So I guess I'm just trying to get my arms around all of it. There's all these, there's these cable companies, and then there's these providers of content, or you have these repositories of content like Netflix and Apple TV and all these different things that are places where you can go for content. And it's almost like there's this sort of state of flux, and it's I think this time next year we're going to be having another different conversation about how all this plays. The only thing I can kind of take away from all of this is that the cable companies, what's going to happen to that if Apple settles and gets some sort of on-demand service going? What happens to a deal like Comcast and Time Warner? So there's all these things that are swirling around my head with all of this. So I don't know. I guess I just want to watch it play out at this point because I'm not sure what the other companies are up to.
Can we go back to that one?
Mm-hmm.
On this topic, and I don't know if we actually got into what this was about. Basically, HBO is now had Amazon Prime. They've allowed them to carry HBO content, which is kind of a big deal because HBO has been really resistant to allowing any of their content to be on any streaming service other than their HBO Go. And talking about customer satisfaction, a lot of customers were unhappy with that because you had to have the cable service, the HBO cable service, in order to also have HBO Go. You can't just have the internet-based service provided. As a result of that, of course, I think we talked about recently that Game of Thrones was the most pirated show ever. And perhaps in part because it's not available anywhere unless you're an HBO subscriber. So this is showing a little bit of a loosening of that hold on their content by allowing Amazon.com or Amazon Prime to carry that content. However,
right, they're not even sharing that.
All of the content they're providing is old material. It's Sopranos, older seasons of True Blood, and Boardwalk Empire, and things along that line, not their current content. So there's no Game of Thrones, and a lot of the comments you'll see on Reddit and other discussion boards related to this is that without Game of Thrones, this is meaningless. I mean that's like a direct quote from some of the comments.
Yeah, it's or is it going to be where they offer some limited Game of Thrones and then try to encourage more of the pay type things that are going on? So it's again, it's like what Apple TV is doing. There's out of all of those stations that are coming on, I can only watch really a few because I don't even have cable. So I appreciate the fact that I can jump on the Smithsonian one and see like some really cool documentaries. But if I want to get on A&E, I have to belong to a cable company, like be a subscriber. So you try to make sense of all this, but as you say, without Game of Thrones, it becomes like sort of a watered down light version, and yet you're paying for it, and so that can kind of work against you in the long run, I think.
What I'm noticing, and this is my own point of view, I don't have research to back this up, but what I'm noticing is there seems to be a real resistance with these networks like HBO to embrace the online format. more fully, because it seems like that's the way things are heading. All the signs are there, but they're still trying to hold on to the cable television uh, model, instead of just allowing an outlet for their content, whether it's a paid subscription or not, but just to allow that to be there without that cable attached to it. Because I don't like you. I don't have cable and I don't have a TV, but I watch stuff online, and I'd be more than happy to watch online content with commercials if it's available. But more often than not, it's just not there.
Well, and then you have the case, as was recently. I don't know if it's completed, but was going to the Supreme Court. I might be behind the curveball here, where that one company was, they go buy a warehouse and they put up all these antennas, and then they grab over the air signals, and then make that available online. And I think this is what's going on, is you're just going to see people that are still not satisfied with this service they're being given. Like you're saying, Lisa, there's this reluctance to really deal with the issue that people want on demand, online, whether it's my phone, my tablet, whatever. Just give me what I'm asking for. And so it's one of those stay tuned, because this story is certainly not over yet.
I think that's also why I was saying why Comcast versus some of these other ones, because you're still paying Comcast to have access to these same things or similar shows and at your own disposal with Netflix or Hulu. And Hulu, I mean, just came out in the news that they jumped from 4 million to 6 million subscribers. These are people that are paying, 6 million people paying. That's huge.
Mhm.
And we're talking about, really, this is the way that people want it. They want to be able to pay for the content that they want, or at least have options to get what they want when they want to watch it. So did you want to chime in with what the chat box is going?
Well, I'm just noticing what Donovan says here. Comcast actually provides a reasonable online on-demand feature, and but that's the point. It's you still have to buy into the cable model,
Right.
and there's this.
And then that's the extra feature. But with Hulu and with Netflix, it is what it is. You're talking about 48 million a month. They've been around a lot longer, and it's still an older model. So I'm sure that that's going to start diminishing, and people are going to start changing to these alternatives. Yep. Where you start looking at all of these other things. Mm-hmm. So I like Shannon just said she remembers when she used to watch a schedule at home when she was, let me read this exactly. Remember when we used to schedule when we would be home to watch shows? Ha ha ha. And it's absolutely true. I mean, who the heck needs a TV guide except my grandparents to watch soap operas? I mean, seriously, you don't really, these are things that are obsolete. We don't use these things anymore. When I get on, every day I get on Netflix at night, and that's my way to wind down. I put on whatever show I want, forward it, stop it as I need. I mean, it's convenience, and this is what people want. Everybody's got different schedules. So this is kind of really where I think we're moving. And Comcast, well, I mean, you've got things like TiVo that can help you pause or record or things like that. Comcast just has a feature that offers on demand as opposed to that being what they do. So, any more comments on this? All right, we're going to get to the final part of media in the news, which is on net neutrality. So back to Lisa.
Okay, yeah. So I think a month or two ago we talked about net neutrality and basically what it's all about, and it's back in the news now, partly because of that Comcast Time Warner Cable merger has brought it back in the spotlight. Also, the FCC recently announced their new guidelines regarding net neutrality, in which they've basically said that it would be okay for internet service providers like Comcast to offer what they call a fast lane for paying customers. And in this case, when I'm talking about paying customers, I'm talking about, say, Netflix pays them extra to boost the speed of their data, as opposed to Hulu, which doesn't pay this extra fee, so their data is slower. So it gives Netflix the edge. That's just an example of how this would work. And while the customer would be paying for that extra boost, it still gives them an advantage over their competition. And so this is a infringement onto net neutrality. Net neutrality in its purest says that all data is equal. If I'm paying for a cable service or an internet service, whatever I want to consume should be a equal value as far as the provider is concerned. But this is starting to change that idea so that some data is better than others in essence.
Yeah.
So that was recently announced by the FCC. As it happens, Comcast has over 100 lobbyists working for them in Washington, so it may not be a coincidence that this all happened at the same time. And they have, I believe, already put some initiatives in place where some of these content providers like Netflix are going to be paying extra to have their content up to speed, basically. There's been a lot of uproar about this online. A lot of people have, I know on my Facebook feed, at least a lot of my more politically active friends have been posting lots of protests. But most vocal in the protest has been the Mozilla Foundation, who you probably know as the creators of Firefox. They're really pushing for the FCC to adopt what's called common carrier guidelines for the internet, which is the same guidelines they use for television and telephone, where basically the transmission channels, whether it's the airwaves or your cable, are treated as sort of a public domain. They own the hardware, but the transmission itself is kind of free and for everyone to use equally.
Lisa, I was going to actually ask you a question. Do you see this quite possibly as, the industry circling the wagons, more of the pro, hey, we do want to charge different amounts of money for different kinds of content? And so, for example, I remember at the Super Bowl, AT&T was charging one thing for data services for telephones, let's say. And then all of a sudden, T-Mobile came out with this killer plan at this commercial at the Super Bowl. So right away, AT&T has to kind of bite the bullet and offer and give away more, like 10 gigabytes of data in their family plan, which radically changed it from $240 a month to $160, let's say. So are these companies, my point is, are these companies kind of circling the wagons and saying, we're getting beat up on other fronts, and this net neutrality issue is a way for us maybe to start charging more and getting these things in. And so if we circle our wagons a little bit better and unite, we might be able to lobby and get this thing done. Do you kind of see the merger of Comcast and all of these types of things as them kind of circling their wagons, the companies circling their wagons to try and find other sources of revenue?
Oh yeah, well, it's definitely them looking for a new source of revenue, and they're big enough to do this, to say we're gonna start charging these extra fees for added for better service. There was an example online, if it was a small provider somewhere in like a local state based provider that tried to pull this sort of deal, they would be laughed at because the content is more important than the service. But because this is serving a third of the country, they can they hold all the cards. They can do what they want in essence, without some kind of regulation. So yes, they're doing what all businesses do and looking for new ways to make money. But it's also a matter of what's fair to the consumer.
All right. And moving on to our next and very exciting first student-led one from this session is I Can't Believe This Is Someone's Job with Ivan. Woohoo!
That looks vectored.
I like it. Looks good.
Crazy, right?
It's like a vector. Look at that. Yeah.
So, hello everyone, my name is Ivan Albino, and for today's segment of I Can't Believe This Is Someone's Job, we are going to talk about what Jimmy Fallon is best at: being a talk show host. Because every week we talk in this segment about crazy jobs that only like 5% of the population has. Even though, don't get me wrong, there are really cool stuff. But have you thought about jobs that you see every day and it would be so much fun to do, like being a talk show host? Do you imagine going to work every day? And by work, I mean hosting a show, talking to top celebrities every day, playing games with them,
So true.
having great bands play their music live for you and for the fans, and really just having fun and being creative with almost any limit. Because if the show is really popular, well, you can do almost everything, like The Tonight Show.
Yeah.
Well, that is the life of a talk show host, especially Jimmy Fallon's life. That's an example I used. But there are many other fun and successful TV show hosts like Jimmy Kimmel and Ellen DeGeneres, which they are really fun and entertaining. Now, this type of job is something that someone must really like and enjoy because even though it's fun, it's still hard work. But that's my personal opinion. I want to know what you guys think. Is this something you find interesting or that some of you would definitely try out? Let me know.
I would definitely not try this out, but I wanted to talk about Jimmy Fallon and what's her name? Emma Stone.
Emma
Oh
Stone.
my
Oh,
gosh,
yeah.
that was so awesome. Sometimes I look at him like this guy, I think I was talking with Shannon and Isabel about this. He's just so genuine that you want to be his friend. And when
Mhm.
he's on his show, you think that he's talking directly to you. And that is such a talent and a gift. And John doesn't like him, but eh.
Yeah,
I like that.
I think Jimmy Fallon's great. I think he's very relatable, and I think most of the people you just mentioned, Ellen DeGeneres, a lot of them, they have that relatable, gift that they can just really connect with people beyond the camera, which is huge. That is so difficult to do. So even if you love it, not everybody has that gift to do it. So
Yeah.
definitely, he does a great job of having fun with his job and enjoying the people that he gets to hang out with and talk with every single night.
Yeah, I think that being transparent and being genuine is the key to have like a successful career as them. So yeah, that's my segment and I hope you liked it.
Yes, it was great. And not to push that out of the way, I didn't mean to do that. But the next one is hashtag be social media savvy with me. So I've never done the hosting and had my segment. But what I wanted to talk about today was balancing social media in your life. So many times I talk about branding, especially outside of the radio program. I do talk about branding yourself, your business, whatever it is that you love to do, as well as who you are. And that can sometimes overlap, which is okay. And people want to see that you're genuine or that you're legit. So I kind of wanted to talk about how so many times in, today's society, we're constantly tweeting, we're constantly Instagramming and Facebooking and doing all of these different things that we can sometimes get overwhelmed and sometimes post way too much or not enough, but in the spirit of authenticity, you want to make sure that you know your balance and don't be obsessed, don't be addicted to any of the stuff that's not healthy for you anyways. But there's 4 quick tips on how to avoid, basically social marketing narcissism, where you're making everything about yourself, and you're probably overposting or doing things you probably shouldn't. The first is that not everything is appropriate to share online. As I talk specifically to our students, this is so important because you're still developing your brand. You're still developing who you guys are professionally. I say that you guys, yeah, you're students, but you should be whatever you already want to become. So if you're a social media strategist, that's who you are. We're all students. We're all constantly learning, but not everything is appropriate to share online. So there's many things that you may want to just keep between your friends and just make it private. And there's other things that you may want everybody to know about because it's relevant to your brand and who you are or your business. So knowing the perspective and when to do what is really, really important. The second thing is pick an appropriate tone and stick with it. If you're going to try to be, both business and personal, make sure that you're consistent. Stay friendly with the topics. If you're a comedian, then stay funny, stay humorous, be lighthearted. If you're dramatic and you like to put a little emo in your stuff, then be consistent. If all of a sudden you have this emo following and all of a sudden you just decide to be a comedian, you're probably going to lose traction with a lot of your followers. So a lot of this has to do with consistency. Um, The third one is think before you comment or tweet or Instagram or Snapchat or whatever it is that you do in the social media world. You guys just need to be really, really conscious about what you guys are putting on there before you hit enter. Remember that even though you delete something, it's already in cyberspace. You don't know who was watching it. This chat box is going crazy on totally other comments. That was so distracting. But yeah, definitely think before you comment. And that's true for all of you guys. Pay attention to that, please. Don't put something you're going to regret. And the final thing is vary the content that you share between your personal experience and then your on brand. If your branding is a little bit different than who you are personally, or if it's different than your business, just make sure that it still kind of ties together. Be consistent. If you own terranium necklaces like we had Katie a few months ago now, then she doesn't have to only post terranium. She can post other things that she likes that are very similar. So vary the content that you post, but still be consistent. And I know that can sound difficult, but sometimes it's good to step back, breathe, look at what you're doing, and relax. Don't take social media so seriously, but you've got to be careful what you post. So I cannot emphasize that enough in any of the social media savvy segments. So be social media savvy, stay safe, watch and guard what you post. It will follow you and haunt you forever. So make sure that you're being consistent about it. And that is what I've got for Be Social Media Savvy with Janelle. And we're out. And our final segment. So there, I had to switch my voice for this. So our final segment, so excited, is Tool Time with Clayson.
Yeah.
Woo!
Thank you, guys. Fear not, there's a new logo coming. And it will be photoshopped up. And so, if you could just... Thank you, Janelle. Now, the first app I have for you guys is for those of you... I think you have to click it one more.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. This app is for those of you who like to eat and like to cook, but that are like me and can't. What are you doing, Janelle?
I don't know.
Click it,
Click.
Yeah.
and then let it play.
Oh, but I didn't want it
Yeah.
to show the toolbar. All right.
So, like I was saying, this is for those of you who like to cook and like to eat but can't. Everything you cook just turns to not very good. And it's called, obviously, Food Network in the Kitchen. I know it's not very MCBS related, but it is real.
Hey,
It is genuine.
y'all cook, so.
So basically what this app does is it takes you through a whole bunch of Food Network chefs, and you can see what they've cooked recently. You can see editor picks. Apparently she cooked some very good rolls. I mean, they do look good. And so I think I'm going to go back. And you can look through the list to see, what Bobby Flay is cooking. You can see what Trisha Yearwood, I didn't know she was a chef, but I guess, I don't know, you can see what they're doing.
The country singer?
Yeah, the country singer.
Huh.
And so you can swipe to the right to see what you're supposed to do if you're entertaining in the spring. I guess you're supposed to make tacos and cupcakes and asparagus, but just some tips. But what I use the app for is to search. If I have if I have a craving for something, like I had a craving for meatloaf one day, so I downloaded the app and I went to the store, bought everything I needed for meatloaf. But I remembered I had a cookbook by what's his name, Alton Brown. So I went up there and I filtered Chef Alton Brown. There we go. And I viewed, and then there is the Good Eats meatloaf. And I love my mother, but her meatloaf doesn't have anything on that meatloaf.
Oh. At least
And
you won't be
so-
listening to this, right?
Wow.
Right. So, and it tells you, how long it takes you to cook it. It tells you how many it'll serve, the ingredients. There's some pictures. And the cool thing with this is you can, again, share it with Facebook, and you can share it with Twitter, email it, all that good stuff. And if you have a Food Network account, you can add it to a shopping list. So all the ingredients you need will be added to a list. Just go into the app, and there's all your stuff. And of course, you can print the recipe for some hard evidence. And that is the first app I have for you guys.
Very cool app.
Thank you. Now, the next one is basically a hard drive cleaner. Now, how many of you have noticed your computer slowed down a little bit ever since you've gotten it? That's basically from a whole bunch of files and folders that your computer creates as you use it. Now, this app is called Disk Diag. And what it does is once you download it from the App Store, you open it up and it'll kind of scan your computer for all those little hidden files that you can't seem to find. And so you have to choose your home folder. You have to choose, which user you're using. I chose Clayson, of course. And it'll scan it. Actually, it'll first pop up and say, hey, buy some more of my stuff. And you say, no, I don't like to pay for stuff. And you start your scan and it shows you, how much free space you have. And it'll show you how much is taken up. Obviously not by all those files, but of everything on your computer. And you scan it, and what it does is it finds everything in your trash. It'll empty that, and those are the files, the cache, the what is that? Say the browser data, logs, everything are those files I was talking to you about. And you're going to delete the files, as I'm going to do in a second. There we go. And it's going to say, hey, are you sure you want to do this? You really can't undo this. Bag everything up, make sure you have a plan B if you do it. And it'll clean it up. And it just cleaned about 334.2 megabytes from your computer, freeing up everything it can. And it's going to say, hey, rate me. No. And that's the app.
I love it. That was a great session. Thank you
you.
so much, Clayson. And I wanted to leave you guys with a little note. Don't forget your mom this weekend. It is Mother's Day on Sunday, and just make sure that she feels special. And I just want to appreciate and thank Ivan and Clayson, our students, because they were the best part of today's show. So thank you guys so much for being here. You guys are amazing. And next week, we will see you guys on Wednesday at 2 p.m. with different hosts and some more students. Thank you guys and have a wonderful rest of the week.
Why don't you know?
Thanks